Will China reduce its stimulus? Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee, because we're going to have a look at an article from Yahoo Finance asking the question of whether the People's Bank of China will taper their stimulus. Now, the news has been awash with several big, high-profile Chinese companies defaulting on their bond payments. And this is important. All of this is important for Australia if they taper back on their stimulus because, well, this is the Observatory of Economic Complexity here, and I'm just going to show well, there you go. 35% of our exports go to China. And that's just of these manufactured exports. That's not counting our international tourism, which, sure, it's kind of non-existent right now, and international students as well, and, well, property and foreign property investment. We'll bring that one up too, everyone. Because, why not? I haven't shown this chart for a while. This is showing you the peak of foreign property investment. China, including Hong Kong and some of the other countries near it, are a big part of that foreign investment. Sure, other nations invest more, but on a numerical number of instances, most of it's coming from China. So that means it's impacting at a finer grain level, impacting the ability for normal people to purchase places to live. What do you think is going to have more of an impact on house prices? A huge project funded by the US or Bechtel, or thousands upon thousands of Chinese coming in and buying investment properties here in Australia? Just what do you think is going to have a bigger impact? And I encountered this when I was working, a few years back with clients where the entire development was completely dependent on offshore funding. Offshore funding. All the sales were going offshore because you can't blame them. They could get more money for it. But the problem is that creates a bubble, and it just makes it harder for people to get in. And, well, you can see the interventions the governments are doing to keep that bubble going right now. But here we go back to this stimulus, because Chinese stimulus, it saved Australia from the GFC. Everyone, not Ruddy, and Ruddy didn't do it. Chinese stimulus. So, if they taper that off, what's that going to mean for our economy? So China's central bank remains on course to taper its emergency support even as a string of defaults by government-linked companies sent tremors through the credit markets. Officials have been preparing investors about the possibility of withdrawing some of that stimulus as the economic recovery picks up pace. While a surge in market interest rates this week following the defaults appear to have complicated that plan, economists say it won't push the People's Bank of China off its policy course. Investors were rattled this week when top Chinese chip maker and a major car manufacturer were the latest to join a growing list of companies to default. A Chinese residential developer said Thursday it failed to repay investors who requested early redemptions. The defaults have triggered a sell-off in the corporate bond market and hurt demand for government assets. While those tensions are a potential hurdle, economists say the People's Bank of China is participating in an effort to enforce discipline in the credit market by allowing some state-owned companies to default. Officials have signaled that the economy's steady rebound from the depths plunged earlier in the pandemic crisis will allow it to unwind at least some of its stimulus measures. So what Bloomberg economists say? China's financial risks remain manageable despite some recent cases of default by state-owned enterprises and the following sell-off in the domestic corporate debt market, with the risks not spread to other markets so far. We think the latest events by themselves won't shift the People's Bank of China's planned path of reducing the scale of stimulus in the coming month. This year, the People's Bank of China has cut the amount of money banks have to keep in reserve, lowered interest rates on loans from the central bank, and provided ample liquidity to commercial banks and financial markets. But the central bank has avoided the aggressive and broad stimulus deployed by peers in the US and Europe since the pandemic began, meaning it has less to do in order to wind that support in again. Lu Guojiang, vice governor of the People's Bank of China, said earlier this month that an exit is likely sooner or later and will be driven by the recovery. Former Finance Minister Liu Jiwei said last week that it was time to study an orderly exit of loose monetary policy. Economists said stimulus withdrawal could take the form of shifting cheap credit facilities to pricier ones or trimming special re-lending instruments. The People's Bank of China on Friday left its one-year loan prime rate, a benchmark for banks' corporate lending rates, unchanged for a seventh straight month at 3.85%. Financial discipline. The nation's economy remains the world's only major one tipped to grow this year, as gauges of industrial production, investment, and consumer spending all point towards an expansion that remains on track. That opens a window to enforce a shake-up in the credit markets, according to Din Shuang, chief economist for the Greater China at Standard Chartered plc in Hong Kong. Imposing financial discipline is never easy, he said. One can argue there is no better time than now to remove the implicit guarantee when the economic recovery gains pace, and renminbi faces appreciation pressures amid capital inflows. While the defaults look striking, the overall number remains below last year, and it's unlikely regulators will allow systematic risk to spread. So a gradual exit. To be clear, the People's Bank of China's exit strategy is expected to be gradual, with relatively cheap funding continuing to be rolled out for banks and businesses. There's little prospect of a near-term interest rate hike. Local governments will be encouraged to stop providing implicit guarantees to state-owned businesses, and defaults will help put a better price on credit risk, said Jing Zopeng, a market economist at Australia and New Zealand Banking Group in Shanghai. Authorities will adopt a measured approach to existing easy policy, he said. The Communist Party in October released initial details of a new 5-year economic plan and signaled a goal to double GDP in 15 years. The stress in the credit market so far at least doesn't challenge those ambitions. A few defaults won't pose systematic risk, said Wen Bin, a researcher at Chinese Mingshang Banking Corp. So there we have it, everyone. It looks like People's Bank of China will be tapering stimulus, but plans are still on track for doubling of GDP in 5 years. Sorry, 5 years. There you go. See, stuff's falling down behind me. It's that shocking. What impact is that going to have on a global market? What impact is that going to have on Australia? What do you reckon? Do you think all the rhetoric about embargoes and restrictions, do you think it'll materialize in iron ore and coal and other resources that we're sending over to China? And what will that do to the Aussie dollar and our property? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below, everyone. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and want to support the content I create here, there are a few ways you can. You can join the channel on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us using our affiliate links at Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or AussieBroadband. You can buy our merch from HeiseSays or Teespring. You can use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care, everyone. Have a great day, and I will see you all in the next episode. Bye for now.